Hey, it's Chris. 4 roll and rights enter. 5 minutes apiece. What do you need to know about them? Are they good for you? Are they good in general? What are they right for? Who aren't they right for? Pros, cons, weaknesses, everything thrown in because we're talking about them. Let's do this. Now I'm going to put a little caveat on this. There are 4 games here. They are all variations of the roll and write, variations of games you may be familiar with, but I'm going to highlight a couple that you may have overlooked. A couple newer, a couple a little bit older, and a little bit of everything in between. Now older, I'm going to put an asterisk there as well. Not old, but older that may have passed you by without you noticing because of all the hype and the hotness. Now, let's do this. What do we got up first? First, we have one of the best ones out there in the market. I'll put this out there right now. This is Let's Make a Bus Route, the dice game. This is a great game. This is a fantastic game. Let me tell you why. If you're not familiar with the original base game of Let's Make a Bus Route, the respin of it, the re-edition of it, was just recently imported over to North America. And this is a classic reimagining of the original game, but it's done, and this is the special tricky part for this game that sets it apart from all the others in this video, is this is 1 to 2 players. If you're looking for a solo roll and write, I'm going to make the argument that this is perhaps one of, if not the best solo roll and write game out there. And the difference is you play it twice through and you take the combination of the scores for the solo game. What you do is you've got your 7 dice here. You've got 6 white and 1 black, and you're going to be rolling, and this is not easily apparent in the video overhead here, but let me show you this way. There is a felt top on the inside here, and what you do is you roll right under there. Did you hear that? That's right. You didn't hear it clattering of the dice because the felt absorbs it nicely. Absolutely tremendous. What you're going to be doing is a little bit of, I cut, you choose style of mechanism with this, where the first player, because each turn you're going to be the first player and then subsequently the second player, and you have 12 turns being the first player, so 24 turns total. What you do is you take a look at the icons that you roll here, and then you choose as the first player 3 of these icons, take them over to your side, and then the remaining icons that are left for the other player, they have to choose one of the 3 to mark on their board as well. You're gonna have 2 main boards set up here in front of you. One is the shared route board, and one is your main player board. And on a turn-by-turn basis, you're gonna be marking off these to keep track of how many turns you've actually taken. Then you're going to be marking through the other various areas based on those white dice that I just showed you, right? So if I choose my white dice as the 2 gray and the 1 green here, and then I get the additional red black die if I want over there as well, that's just my free one essentially, I get to mark off 2 of my gray passengers and 1 of my green passengers. So green passenger here, gray student, sorry about that one. And then that's going to be my turn essentially on my player board. The second player though is going to look at the remaining dice, and they have a purple, a gray, and a red. And that goes to the route that they're going to be building on this board. And so you're going to be starting, say at C, for example, and the other person might be starting at A. And so they're going to take a look at their board, and these are, the same for both people. Then they have the red, which is 1 straight line. They have the gray, which is 2 straight lines, or the purple, which is 3 straight lines. And so they choose one of those and mark it accordingly. And as they cross areas on here, they're going to be, again, marking stuff off on their sideboard as well. So you can go in any direction. The tricky part is you just can't overlap your route. And if you run into somebody else's route, then you get traffic, and traffic is bad in this game. You lose points as evidenced by this area on the board right there. And then you're going to be losing spots if you cannot also take one of these dice. Let's say I already have 2 marked in all of these 3. I've already taken this route 3 times. I've already taken these routes twice each. Well, then I'm going to lose additional points as well there. And if you break a route, meaning I don't have to take 3 in a row, I could go up 2 and over 1, but I'm going to break routes and I'm going to lose points there. So there are 3 ways that you can actually lose points in this game if you're not good planning wise, right? So let's say I take the purple route in this case. Then I look at my spot C here and I can go 3. Well, it can't go that way, can't go that way. So I'm either going to go this way and hit one of the purple areas. Well, the purple area is good if I already have purple passengers, photographers taking pictures. I don't have any, so that's not terribly great for me. So then down is really my only option here. So 1, 2, 3, and then I'm into this intersection. That intersection doesn't contain anything. It doesn't have a green light. Green light means you can go again. You'll also notice that there are shapes here that you're going to be filling out and circling and marking off accordingly on the bottom here as well. So that's going to be additional ways that you can get those green spots filled up. And that one's actually a star, so it wouldn't be there, but it'd be this one. And so the highest row that you get across here is going to give you points. This is multiplied by this. This gets dropped off. These get dropped off to the blue areas. There's a few other little special rules here that allow you to, if you get the red dice, this is where the red dice come in handy. Otherwise, they don't really do anything but the routes. But if you fill these out, it gets you special powers to flip the die, to turn the die, or to get an extra black die roll. And then at the end of the game, 12 rounds, full rounds where everyone's been the first player 12 times, the game ends and you score up all those points. And it's a lot more variable than its predecessor. The biggest problem I had with its predecessor that plays up to 3 and 4 is that it was kind of samey all the time. But this dice rolling element in this one, instead of just the card flipping route choosing one in the original, gives it head and shoulders life. Head and Shoulders won't ever get rid of this one. I won't ever get rid of the original, but I have nostalgia for it more so than anything else. But it's probably one of the more accessible ones. But if this one played 3 and 4, this would be the ultimate roll-and write for me, personally speaking. And that's why it's amazing. You can actually order it through Amazon Japan. They now ship to the USA, in case you're where I live too. So there you go, number 1. I didn't mention though, but this is a small box. This is ideal styling and size for a game like this. It doesn't need to be huge. I love that fact as well. Japanese games do it well, but this one's also going to cost you more than the other games. This is running between $40 and $50, so take that for what you will. Just throwing it out there. So next up, we're going to talk about actually the biggest box, and this one is actually the newest as well. This is Dungeon Scrawlers, Dungeons and Dragons Dungeon Scrawlers from WizKids. This isn't exactly a roll and write because there's no actual rolling with this game, but it does a different spin on the draw on your board in front of you style type of game that this is really what this video is about. Let me show you exactly what I mean by that though. So here I have in front of me a huge stack of boards, and these are dry erase boards. And so that's the other nice thing is it's not actually a roll and write. It's not worrying about the pads and ripping them off and only having so many of them. Not that you ever go through all of them. Anyway, that's a moot point. But the point being that you have 4 of these, so you can play up to 4 players at a time. And the interesting thing about this is there's actually 2 dungeons on a board. And so you can see one side has this, the other side, if we flip it over, looks like that. And you can then see that this is a little bit of a maze. And in case you didn't read the fine print on that box, because I only showed it very briefly, this is a real-time dungeon racing game, meaning a real-time dungeon writing, a real-time dungeon drawing through trying to get to the end of the maze with a few caveats, and this is where it actually gets really fun. Let me be clear, this one is a heck of a lot of fun. This is probably the most fun of these 4. You know, good games that are fun, right? Sometimes there's a high overlap. Sometimes you look at it from just a pure mechanistic standpoint, but it's not fun. You know, the Venn diagram between both of those is not as large as we'd like to think in the hobby sometimes. So essentially what you've got going on here is you just have a ton of different iconography, but the iconography is really easy. How you trace them, how you draw on this board is going to be the difference, and how you get to cheat about that also is a little bit of the catch. So what you'll see here is I have different cards. You have 5 different characters, your Dungeons and Dragons typical tropes that are going to be available to you, and each of them has a slight advantage of how they can draw. And so what you're doing here is you're tracing this path. You're trying to get to this monster over here, and when you get to this monster over here, you have to fill him all the way in. First one to fill him all the way in completely ends the dungeon. And so then at the end of the dungeon, you total up your points that you're getting along the way. Well, how do you get those points? Well, what you do is you start down here at the beginning and you slowly, well, not slowly, you trace your way around. And so you can see here that I have a few things that are outlined in yellow. Outlined in yellow means you actually have to outline them. And you have to go and continuously keep a line going from one object to the next. Then you have little monsters. Monsters you have to fill in just like the boss. Boom, there you go. And then you go to this yellow one, and then you get to these little purple ones right here. These are actually spells. And so spells you have to then go all the way through and trace and get that sort of thing like that. And so what you're doing though, and the main difference with this game is if you go into a room, you have to do everything in the room. If you don't do everything in the room, at the end of the round, at the end of the maze, you will lose points for everything that you do not do in a round, and you have to do them in that way. Well, going back to those characters for a second that I showed you, now that you understand a little bit of the nuance there, you have characters that are going to break the rules. The barbarian here, for example, doesn't need to actually trace in the whole little monster boss minion. He can just draw a straight line through it. Ranger here gets 2 points for every flower instead of 1. The cleric, I didn't show you the numbers, but there are numbered rooms here that you can see right here. You're gonna have anywhere of a number divisible by 3, meaning you're gonna have 6 or 9 different numbers in there, and you typically have to do them in order. So if, you know, I'm a left-handed, but in order to not block it, I go 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 to 9. So that gets really messy. But you'll notice the other thing I didn't do in this is I did not touch the wall. I did not go too fast to hit the wall, because if you hit the wall, you lose points. And that's where this guy allows you to break it. You can just cross them off in any order. Rogue here gets to be able to just cross off instead of outline the gold objects. And then you have the wizard who does the same thing to spells, right? Makes sense. Very straightforward, very strategic. The other element of this thing, right? Because you could look at it and go, Chris, even if you have 8 boards, right? I'm going to start to know the routes. I'm going to start to know which way to go. No, you won't. Why is that? You've got a few other added elements, right? You've got little coins that are going to be across the board here and here. And so if you go out of your way and you get those, you also have to backtrack, but those are additional victory points. And there's only a certain limited supply in the center of the board table that you're playing in. So as people cross off their gold pieces, people are going to reach into the center each round and grab those gold pieces. And so eventually you might get 5 or 6 more gold pieces, but you're not going to have any more gold coins in the middle of the table to grab, so they're not going to get you actually any points. Oh, did I mention there's going to be locked doors that you're actually going to have to get keys for? You're going to have various colors of keys that you may have to utilize. Oh, and there's also combinations of ribbons. You're going to get prizes, because what you'll see here in the ribbons is you're going to have these token portals. And if you're the first one there, you get the first points. And if you get the second one there, you get the second points. But, you know, if there's more than one on a map, as there is up here with a red one, and then we scroll all the way down here, there's another one down here, you can actually get 2 different places, and the other people are just going to be SOL. Oh, did I mention the fact that sometimes there's going to be little portals, and you're going to have to pull up one of these little mini dungeons and go through the mini dungeon and get out one of the various exits that are going to be available to you, because you may have 3 ways of going into the mini dungeon. You may have 3 ways of going out of the mini dungeon, each of which are going to put you in a different place on the maze. You're also going to have mini boss cards as well. Mini bosses. Look at this. Mini boss cards, mini boss maps. Again, just a little bit of craziness everywhere. That's a cool freaking beholder, by the way. So that's the gist of the game. And does it freaking work? Yeah, it freaking works. Do you fill up every object in every room, try to go as fast as you can and go? Do you skip some objects and try and be the first one done in order to optimize, but also kind of, you know, screw everybody else? Or do you just have fun with it and take your own style and spin of things and not worry about it too much? Because there's that too. My 9-year-old loves this. My 7-year-old likes it. My wife likes it. This is an absolutely amazing concept that is just one of those things where you go, why didn't I think of that? And it just works. It just freaking works. Like, I was not expecting 8 different boards in the game. Like, I opened this up and I said, holy crap, what is all this stuff? And I said, wow, these are all different. These are all asymmetric. They're just really cool. And there's just so much to do each time. And that's just why it's a good game. Like, you could play this game over and over and over, because all you're essentially doing, if you notice the character cards that I showed you, right, they have 3 different spots for scores at the bottom. That's because you play any 3 of these maps that you want in a row and you total up your scores from all 3 of them. It's a race, baby. Real-time race. If you know anything about me on the channel, I love me some real-time. I love me some real-time games, and this one is no exception. So WizKids got a good game on their hands here. I like it. I like it a lot. The next one we're going to talk about here is Welcome to Moon. And this, again, is another interesting twist on the roll and write genre, because what you've got essentially here is sort of a campaign-style, scenario-driven roll and write. And that, in and of itself, does it actually work? Yeah, it does. It's freaking good, actually. You know, I wasn't really sure about this one. It plays solo. It plays 25 minutes a game, and you can play up to 6 people simultaneously. I mean, that's a really interesting playtime, but also a really interesting player count, because you don't get a lot of games that have, again, a good Venn diagram of that sort of overlap. Again, very similar in sense to Dungeon Scrawlers from WizKids, because you end up with all of these different boards, and you can see that, again, you get a bunch of copies of one, and then you get the other copies on the other side, and then you get the other copies here and there, and so you've got just a bunch of different copies that you're going to be dealing with. You also have the game decks you're going to be unlocking and adding new elements and dealing new things as you go along. And this is a step up. This is a step up from the regular Welcome to. It's also a regular step up from something like a Cartographers or a Dungeon Scrawlers or any of these other ones that I've sort of talked about or mentioned in the past. And it's nice because you're going to have a lot of optimization. You actually have a lot of stuff going on, for example, on this one very first mission. You're going to be trying to slowly build up your points here, which is going to unlock extra spaceships. You're going to slowly build up your points here as you go across, filling in numbers. They have to be in numerical order. And so you're going to have limits of how far you can put them or which ones you can put them in as you're going going across, and they're going to unlock things as you go, and you're going to be unlocking things over here and over here and over here. And so you just have a lot of different stuff going on, but it's not actually that complicated at the same time. And then you just flip this over, and again, you have a completely different setup. You know, you can say that about dungeon scrollers, right? It's basically a maze every time. This is a different setup with different unlocks, with different progressions every single board, which is why it's great. And you can play one, you can play as many as you want, and they're all relatively short time span. And so again, that can't be underappreciated in terms of the amount of replayability that you get with this. And you can pick your favorite ones and you can kind of go, because you can do the same thing every single time, even though it's a campaign game. I did not say this is a legacy game. Those two things are completely different, because if it was a legacy game, I'd be a little bit disappointed, because, you know, legacy games tend to leave you like that. But I mean, you can just see the sheer variety of how you're going to be unlocking these things, and it just runs you through everything you need to know with this campaign book. And when I say that it runs you through it, I mean, like, you have a lot of scenario driven stuff here, and it tells you which chapters to go to, which event cards to pull in, how it's going to change the rules, what's going to go dynamically, and how is it going to change just everything you're dealing with. And so it has a little bit of that to go along with it as well. But it's a little bit more overhead because you're doing this. But you know what? If you just want to do some of this stuff, you can do that too. You can get away with it. And again, from a solo side of things, it works pretty well too. I'm pretty well satisfied playing it solo in addition to playing multiplayer. So, you know, again, one of those concepts that on paper, I don't really think it should work. And in execution, it does better than I'd ever think it would be able to do. So there you go. Welcome to Moon. Welcome. Last one up here, and not least, let me be very clear. Motor City from Motor City Games and 25th Century Games. I had the pleasure of being able to test the print and play prior to the crowdfunding campaign for this one. And this is probably the one that I would go to if you're looking for something that's a step up, like something step up complexity, but also very easy intuitively. Like Welcome to is a little bit more less intuitive, a little bit more less intuitive, right? A little less intuitive at times when you're going through some of the scenarios. This takes the intuitiveness, but also adds the dynamics of the complexity as you're going back and forth between two different player boards. I like this one. This one's going to be controversial. I like this much better than Three Sisters. Three Sisters is a little bit overwhelming for someone like myself at times because it's a little bit heavier. It's a little bit more mechanistically deep. And this one keeps some of that, but also just makes it easier to actually explain to other people and understand to play and just to hit the table more frequently. The big difference here, as you can see from the overhead view, is you have this sideboard to go along with each of your two player boards. And you have a whole huge plethora of dice here that you're going to be going through because these dice are going to correspond to the levels. And so as you put them in, they're going to correspond to the color of the dice, but then also as you go across this way, the number of the die that is rolled as well. And then you're going to be having actually another die that's going to go across that's going to actually block actions from being done on a round by round basis if it gets into one of these slots up here, especially when you're playing solo. And as you're placing these dice, that's going to determine what actions you're going to be able to take on your turn, because you're going to pull dice from here that are going to correspond to how strong the actions are on these two boards, but also the other action that corresponds to it underneath where the die is located in the first place. So the tricky part about this game, and this is, a little bit deceiving because it's a little bit far out from you, and I'll pull this up here so you can see a little bit closer in some detail here. We'll go back and forth between each of the games here. We'll go back and forth between each of the games here because you can't get the full sense of how complicated this actually is, at the same time relatively intuitive, because the symbology is matching across all of these boards. But you're going to see you have the dealership area here, you have the speedometer here, you have the test track over here, and this is going to be the scoring of the rounds as you're going along. Then we pull over the other player board, and you've got another set of actions up here that's going to be your upgrades. You've got your research, your engineering, and your production down here, as well as your shop. And so you're going to be having all of these other areas to build up as well alongside of that. And so that's a lot of different areas that you're managing all at once, but they're very interconnected, and you're going to be back and forth choosing one, maybe eliminating another, depending on how interactive you want to be, or depending on what you want to specialize between the two boards in general. You're going to be having to get certain spots in certain areas in these locations and these locations and these locations in order to get certain unlocks for endgame bonuses, in order to get the most efficient engine built, literally figuratively speaking, in this game. Because right, it's cars and engines and it's an engine builder. Excuse the pun, I'm a dad. But that's going to be the dynamic that you're going to be dealing with, and having this extra board seems a little bit rather unintuitive when you first start playing it, but it really works in terms of helping you choose, because it's not just a choose, it's an action optimization way of doing a roll and write situation in this game. I'll be frank with you, when I first got the print and play prior to the campaign, I was really scared that this game was like Three Sisters and it was going to be well out of my depth, and it's going to be like Hadrian's Wall or something like that that's just really complex. And on the surface, it seems like that with all of these different areas. but when you actually play it, it just is very, 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 very intuitive. And I cannot say that enough, because I worry about games that are overly complex, and then you're trying to, put all the pieces together, like over here, I'm grasping this one over here and over here. But that's why I like games like Bitoku. Like, I played Bitoku, I played Do Imperium, and I see the pieces, how they go together. It doesn't mean I'm good at putting the pieces together, right? Those two things are completely different, but I can see how they go together and how they should go together. And can I do it better than you? That's the question. And this has more of that without feeling overwhelming, and really just kind of being satisfying. And if that's what you're looking for, I mean, this is an absolute standout game from that aspect of things. If you like Three Sisters, again, my preference is this over Three Sisters. It's probably not as complex, but it's not too far of a notch or two down either. So if you're not wanting something like a Cartographers or something along those lines, this is not anywhere near that either. So you're going to be probably digging this one as well. There you go. 4 roll and writes, everything you need to know about them. Quick snap judgments, decisions, pros, cons, everything else in between. Just fun games. Like more of this, doing comparisons, doing head-to-heads, doing back-to-backs, small format, quick review, all in one video. Let me know what you think. Subscribe if you want. Trying to get 10K. Subscribe. I don't want to be one of those people, but I feel like I don't say it enough too. And I feel like people actually somehow that works from a marketing standpoint. Like if you tell people to do it, they'll do it. I don't know. Everyone else does it too. I got nothing else. I'm just rambling. Stay classy. Thanks for watching. See you around.